It's funny, the things you remember right before everything goes to hell. I remember the way the late afternoon sun was hitting the dust on the dashboard. I remember the low, hypnotic hum of the tires on the asphalt. Greg's wedding had been a wedding, long, a little boring, open bar. Now on the drive back, there was a kind of peace in the car. Naomi and I, 3 years post-breakup, had finally achieved the mythical adult friendship, which mostly meant we could sit in a car together for 5 hours without wanting to kill each other. The silence wasn't awkward. It was a lived-in silence, the kind you only share with someone who knows which of your family anecdotes are exaggerated. She'd put on a playlist from that one indie band we both used to love, and the music was a soft, nostalgic cushion. I was tired. My head was leaning against the cool glass of the passenger window, my eyes half closed, watching the trees blur into a green smear. I must have been drifting off. That's when she spoke. Her voice wasn't loud or angry or scared. It was perfectly level, so calm it cut right through the music and the road noise and the sleepy fog in my brain. "Peter," she said, not even turning to look at me, "you know which part of the car is broken so we can't stop, right?" I opened my eyes. The highway signs were still flying past at 70 miles per hour. The music was still playing. For a second I was sure I dreamed it, but then I looked at her. She was just staring straight ahead at the road, her hands resting calmly on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, like she'd just asked me if I wanted to pull over for coffee. My brain did a hard reboot. "What?" I laughed, but the sound came out like a dry cough. "That's not funny, Naomi." I sat up straight, the comfortable daze completely gone, replaced by a jolt of adrenaline. "Pull over." "I can't," she said with that same infuriating, placid tone. It was the voice she used to use when explaining a complicated recipe, patient and a little condescending. "That's the point." "What the hell are you talking about? Just pull over to the shoulder." My voice was getting louder, sharper. I could feel a hot knot of panic tightening in my chest. "Peter, listen to me very carefully," she said, finally turning her head to look at me for a single, unnerving second. Her eyes were wide and clear. There was no hint of a joke in them. "I noticed it this morning before we left the hotel. There's a tiny, slow leak in the brake fluid line. It's been weeping for hours. If I slam on the brakes, or even if I pump them too much getting onto an off-ramp, there's a very good chance the pressure will drop completely. Then we'll have nothing." Every word was delivered with the precision of a surgeon. It sounded so technical, so plausible. For a horrifying moment I believed her completely. My blood ran cold. I imagined the pedals sinking to the floor, the car hurtling forward, the sickening crunch of metal. "So what do we do?" I asked, my own voice now a strained whisper. "We keep going," she said, turning her attention back to the endless ribbon of road. "We maintain a constant speed. We wait for the right place to stop. A long, straight, empty stretch where we can just coast to a halt. It's the only safe way." Her logic was a perfect, self-contained trap. It made sense, just enough sense to be terrifying. But it wasn't the mechanical explanation that was really scaring me. It was her. It was the utter lack of fear in her voice. She wasn't a fellow victim in a crisis, she was the narrator of it. And as I stared at her profile against the fading light, at the small, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips, I realized with a sickening lurch that she had been waiting for this. She wasn't dealing with a crisis, she was savoring it. I wasn't her friend, I was her audience, and I was trapped. The miles began to stretch into an eternity. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in angry shades of orange and purple, and still we drove. The car, once a symbol of a pleasant, shared memory, had become a steel and glass prison cell, and Naomi was the warden. Once the initial shock wore off, a suffocating claustrophobia set in. She turned the music off. The silence that filled the car now was heavy, charged with unspoken things. Then she started talking. "Do you remember that time we went to Cape May?" she asked, her voice soft and conversational as if we were just reminiscing over dinner. "Yeah, of course," I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. "It was our first real trip together. I remembered the sunburn, the salty air, the cheap boardwalk pizza. You wanted to go to that seafood place, the one your parents used to like," she continued. "I wanted to try that little Italian bistro everyone was talking about. We went to the seafood place." She said it not as a statement, but as an indictment. I thought we both agreed. "No, Peter," she cut me off, her voice still gentle but with an edge of steel. "You explained why the seafood place was a better choice. You laid out the logic, the history, the nostalgia. You made it sound so reasonable that arguing for the bistro would have made me seem selfish and frivolous. So I agreed. I let you have your way." This was how it went. She unspooled our entire 3-year relationship, but she presented a version I didn't recognize. It was a highlight reel of my every perceived failure, every moment of casual thoughtlessness reframed as a calculated act of cruelty. The time I was late to her gallery opening wasn't because of a subway delay. It was a subconscious effort to diminish her achievement. The time I bought her the wrong kind of flowers wasn't a simple mistake, it was proof I never truly listened. She had this incredible, terrifying ability to take a shared memory, a moment I had filed away as happy, and hold it up to a different light, revealing a network of cracks and flaws I'd never seen. I tried to defend myself at first. I'd say, "That's not how it happened," or "You're twisting it." And she would just smile that serene, chilling smile. "You see, you're doing it again. You're invalidating my feelings. You're making it about your intention, not about the consequence." The highway became a courtroom, and every passing mile marker was another piece of evidence against me. The worst part was she was so damn convincing. She spoke with the unshakable conviction of a prophet. I felt my own memories starting to warp under the pressure of her narrative. Was I that person? Had I really been that blind, that selfish? The hum of the tires was the only sound, a monotonous drone underscoring my public trial. The confusion was a physical thing, a thick fog in my head, and the fear was a cold, hard stone in my gut. I wasn't just a hostage in a car, I was a hostage in her version of our past. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I needed to do something. I needed an outside voice, a dose of sanity from a world that wasn't being curated by Naomi. She was focused on the road, her monologue flowing, lost in her own twisted epic. My phone was in my jacket pocket, resting on the seat between us. My hand was shaking so badly I was afraid she'd notice the movement. Slowly, millimeter by millimeter, I slid my hand into the pocket. The cool, smooth glass of the screen felt like a lifeline. I angled my body slightly towards the window, pretending to look at the passing trucks, shielding the screen with my body. My thumb, slick with sweat, fumbled with the passcode. The screen lit up, blindingly bright in the dark cabin. I dimmed it instantly, my breath catching in my throat. She didn't seem to notice. I opened the Reddit app. My mind was a blank, a screaming void. What do you even type? Help, my ex is holding me hostage with a story about brake fluid. It sounded insane. I navigated to a sub I sometimes lurked on, one for weird, unexplainable situations. My thumbs flew across the keyboard, clumsy and frantic. Title: Trapped in a Car with My Ex. She says the brakes are out and won't stop. Is she crazy or am I in danger? I kept the post short, a staccato burst of panic. On a long drive back from a wedding with my ex, Naomi. We've been broken up for years but are friendly. Out of nowhere, she says the brakes are failing and we can't stop or slow down too fast. She has a very technical sounding reason. But her demeanor is off, really calm. She's just been talking for the last hour, twisting our old relationship into something ugly. I don't know if this is a psychotic break or if the car is actually broken and she's just handling the stress weirdly. I'm on a minus 80 West, somewhere in Pennsylvania. What do I do? I'm scared to make her angry. I hit post. The word submitting hung on the screen for an agonizing second, then it was live. It felt like screaming into the void. A tiny digital flare shot up from a moving car in the middle of a dark, lonely highway. I locked the phone and shoved it deep into my pocket, my heart still pounding. I had no idea if it would help, but I wasn't entirely alone anymore. The thought was a single, flickering candle in the overwhelming darkness. My gaze kept darting around the claustrophobic confines of the car, searching for I don't know what. An escape hatch, a flaw in her story, anything. That's when my eyes landed on the bag in the back seat. It was a heavy-duty canvas tool roll, olive green and stained with grease and what looked like polishing compound. It was Naomi's. She was a jeweler, a damn good one, and she always carried a bizarre assortment of tools with her: pliers, files, tiny hammers, a small butane torch. It was always half unfurled on the floor of her passenger seat, a habit that used to drive me crazy. "I'm thirsty," I croaked, my throat dry as sandpaper. "Is there any water back there?" It was a flimsy excuse, but the only one I could think of. "I think so, in my tote bag," she said, her attention not wavering from her verbal onslaught. She was dissecting the time I'd forgotten her half-birthday, imbuing it with the weight of a profound betrayal. I twisted in my seat, my movements intentionally clumsy, reaching into the back. My hand fumbled past her canvas tote and brushed against the tool roll. It was open, just a few inches, revealing the organized chaos within. My fingers closed around a plastic water bottle, but my eyes were glued to something else. There, nestled between a set of needle-nose pliers and a buffing wheel, was a small wrench. A line wrench, the kind specifically designed for gripping the fittings on automotive fluid lines without stripping them. It was small, maybe 6 inches long. And on its jaws, glistening under the faint, intermittent glow of the overhead highway lights, was a smear of clear, oily fluid. Brake fluid. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't just the wrench. Tucked beside it, folded into a messy square, was a piece of paper. It looked like it had been ripped out of a library printer. I could just make out the bolded headline from the angle I was at. It read, How to Safely Simulate Chronic Brake Line Failure for Audits. The world tilted on its axis. Every word she had spoken, every calm, rational explanation about the weeping fluid line replayed in my head, but now it was sinister, rehearsed. This wasn't a discovery, this wasn't a freak accident, this was sabotage. This was a meticulously researched, carefully executed plan. The chill I felt before was a vague premonition. This was the cold, hard certainty of a calculated plot. She hadn't just stumbled upon an opportunity for her calculated scenario. She had brought a toolbox and a printout. She had created it. The depth of the premeditation was staggering. My fear, which had been a hot, panicked thing, instantly cooled into something heavy, dense, and terrifyingly clear. I wasn't in a car with a person having a mental breakdown. I was in a car with a monster. The water bottle slipped from my grasp, falling to the floor mat with a dull, unnoticed thud. I didn't care. I turned back to face the front, my body as rigid as if it had been flash frozen. The suffocating fog of confusion, the self-doubt she had so expertly cultivated, it all evaporated in an instant. It was replaced by a terrifying diamond-hard clarity. The fear was still there, a cold, heavy mass in my stomach, but it was no longer a panicked, fluttering thing. It was the calculated fear of a man who suddenly understands the precise and deliberate nature of the trap he is in. And alongside it, a new feeling was rising. A cold, pure, silent rage. I let her talk for another minute, her voice weaving another tapestry of my failures. I needed to be sure. I needed my own voice to be level when I finally spoke. You know, you're an incredible jeweler, Naomi, I said, my voice unnervingly calm, cutting through her narrative. So precise, you always have the right tool for the job. She stopped. The abrupt silence was a physical shock. What does that have to do with anything? She asked, a flicker of annoyance in her tone. I had interrupted her sermon. Everything, I said, and now I let the ice into my voice. Like that little wrench in your tool bag, the line wrench, the one with the fresh brake fluid glistening on its jaws. I watched her profile in the dim, shifting light from the dashboard. I saw the muscles in her jaw leap and tighten. Her knuckles, already pale on the steering wheel, turned a bloodless white. In the printout, I pressed on, my voice gaining a hard, percussive strength. I'm guessing the title was something like, How to Safely Simulate Chronic Brake Line Failure. You didn't find a leak this morning, did you? You've been planning this. You made one. The mask didn't just crack, it was utterly obliterated. The serene, wounded prophet vanished, and in her place was something raw and feral. Her face, illuminated in the green and orange glow, twisted into a snarl of such profound, undiluted fury it barely looked human. You weren't supposed to see that, she shrieked, and the sound was a physical blow, a raw, ugly tearing of the air inside the car. It was the sound of a plan, years in the making, coming undone. You ruin everything, you always ruin everything, even this. She slammed her palm against the steering wheel, and the car swerved slightly before she jerked it back. I planned this for so long, Peter. I bought the wrench 6 months ago, I practiced on junk parts from the scrapyard. I just needed you to listen. For once in your goddamn selfish life, I needed you to sit there and take it, to finally understand what you did to me. What I did, I yelled back, the rage finally erupting from my chest, hot as lava. What you're doing is kidnapping. You sabotaged a car on a highway with both of us in it. Are you completely insane? I needed your full attention, she screamed, her voice hoarse, spittle flying from her lips as she turned towards me, her eyes wild. It was the only way, the only stage you couldn't just walk off of. The only argument you couldn't end by telling me I was being too emotional or dramatic. Here, you have to listen. Here, your life is actually in my hands, and maybe now you'll finally get it. It was at that precise apex of chaos, her screaming, my yelling, the whole car vibrating with a homicidal rage, that I saw it. A single distant flicker in the rearview mirror. Then another, red, blue, red, blue. It was growing larger, brighter, painting the inside of our car in strobing, nightmarish flashes. A police cruiser, it was closing the distance, fast. Naomi saw it too, her rant cut off with a choked gasp. A raw, animal panic wiped the rage from her face, replacing it with a new, more volatile terror. I saw her foot twitch over the accelerator. Her eyes darted from the mirror to the road ahead, then to me. In that split second, a universe of horrifying possibilities flashed through my mind. I could lean on the horn, start waving my arms, mouth the word help at the approaching windshield. But I saw the cliff edge she was on. I saw her yanking the wheel, sending us into the concrete median at 75 miles an hour. I saw her flooring it, a final, insane burst for freedom that would end in a tangle of steel and fire. The cop, seeing only a car, couldn't possibly know he was approaching a bomb with a lit fuse. My survival instinct took over, a cold, reptilian part of my brain that bypassed all the anger and indignation. Survive first, de-escalate. I took a deep, shuddering breath, forcing the rage down, burying it. Okay, I said, my voice suddenly quiet, a grotesque imitation of her earlier calm. Okay, Naomi. You're right, the words tasted like ash in my mouth. You're right, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. I'm listening now, just drive normally. He's probably just running a plate. Don't give him a reason to pull us over, don't let him ruin this. This is about you and me, I'm ready to listen. My words hung in the air, a desperate last-ditch gamble. The flashing lights were getting closer, bathing the car in a frantic, pulsating rhythm that matched the beating of my own heart. Naomi's breathing was ragged, a series of short, sharp gasps. Her eyes were still wide with panic, darting between the rearview mirror and my face, trying to process my sudden surrender. You're just saying that because of him, she hissed, nodding her head towards the police car. No, I said, forcing a sincerity I was nowhere near feeling. I'm saying it because you were right. I saw the wrench and I got angry. I wasn't thinking, but you're right, this is more important. What happens between us is more important than anything else. Please just drive, let him pass, then you can finish. I watched her, holding my breath. It was the performance of my life. I had to project contrition, understanding, a desire to continue her twisted therapy session. I had to make her believe that her insane plan was more important to me than my own rescue. The cruiser pulled up into the lane beside us. For a terrifying, eternal 5 seconds it just stayed there, pacing us. I kept my eyes fixed on Naomi, not daring to look at the officer. I could feel his unseen gaze on our car. Naomi's hands were a white-knuckled vice on the wheel. The car's speed, which had been a steady 70, began to creep up. 71, 72. Easy, Naomi, I whispered. Just hold your speed, he's just looking. She was a taut wire, ready to snap. I could almost hear the frantic calculations whirring in her head. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the cruiser's blinker came on, and it accelerated smoothly past us, pulling back into our lane and continuing on its way down the highway, the flashing lights shrinking into the distance until they were just another pair of red tail lights. The tension in the car didn't dissipate, it transformed. The immediate sharp threat was gone, but now I was left with the consequences of my choice. I had actively chosen to remain her prisoner. Naomi let out a long, shuddering breath, a sound that was half sob, half laugh. He's gone, she whispered, as if to herself. She turned to look at me, and the look on her face was no longer fury or panic. It was something worse, it was triumph, a smug, victorious glow. In her mind, I hadn't just placated her to save our lives, I had validated her. I had chosen her drama over the law, over safety. I had proven her point, that the world she had constructed with its own rules and its own stakes was the only one that mattered. Good, she said, her voice regaining its chilling composure. Now, where were we? But the dynamic had shifted. I wasn't a confused victim anymore. I was a player in a game, feigning compliance, looking for the next move. My gaze drifted to the exit signs. My mind was no longer a whirlwind of fear, but a cold, desperate calculator, measuring distances, speeds, and opportunities. I started talking, agreeing with her, feeding her narrative, asking clarifying questions about my past sins. I was buying time mile by mile, hoping to find an off-ramp, a rest stop, anything that wasn't a 70 mph blur of darkness. I had to find the perfect place to stop before she did. The car finally rolled to a stop. The silence was deafening. After hours of the constant drone of the engine and the tires, the sudden stillness felt unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. We were at the very end of a long, straight exit ramp that fed into a deserted industrial park. It was my idea. I had seen the sign for Oak Ridge Commerce Center and sold it to her as the perfect, isolated place where we could coast to a stop without any other cars, without any pressure. I'd sold it as the perfect final stage for her confession. She had bought it. For a moment, neither of us moved. We just sat there in the humming silence, the tableau of our shared nightmare frozen under the sickly orange glow of a single sodium lamp. Then the adrenaline that had been keeping me sharp and focused for hours vanished, and a violent, full-body tremor took its place. My door was unlocked. I fumbled with the handle, my fingers feeling thick and clumsy, and practically fell out of the car onto the rough asphalt. The cool night air hit my face, and it felt like I was breathing for the first time in a year. I stumbled a few feet away from the car and bent over, my hands on my knees and dry heaved. Nothing came up but bitter bile. My body was trying to expel a poison that was purely psychological. I could hear the driver's side door open behind me. I didn't look back. Then I heard a new sound. It wasn't the sound of her approaching me. It was the sound of her weeping. Not the performative, angry tears from before, but a deep, ragged, guttural sobbing. It was the sound of a complete and total collapse, the sound of the puppeteer when all the strings have been cut. I finally straightened up and turned. She was slumped in the driver's seat, her head buried in her hands, her whole body shaking with wrenching sobs. The monster was gone. In her place was just a profoundly broken person, sitting in the driver's seat of a car she had deliberately damaged at the end of a road to nowhere. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anger, I felt nothing, a vast, echoing emptiness. I looked past her, past the car, to the distant, glittering lights of the city skyline. It looked like a different planet. My phone, which I'd forgotten about, buzzed in my pocket, and then again. It was the Reddit notifications, I assumed. A chorus of voices from a world I no longer felt connected to. I had no desire to look at it. The story was over. I was safe. I had survived, but the cost was steep. Every single good memory I had of her, of us, the trip to Cape May, the lazy Sunday mornings, the inside jokes, was now tainted, overlaid with the sinister filter of her obsessive 3-year-long plan. The past wasn't just gone, it had been actively murdered right here on this highway, and that was a loss I knew I would feel for a very, very long time. Final update, it's been a few days. I'm posting this from my laptop because I still can't really look at my phone without feeling a jolt of something awful. I wanted to give a final update for everyone who commented and sent messages. Thank you, I read them all and they helped more than you know. The police were involved. After I called them from the side of that road, they took her in. They got a warrant for her apartment. It was worse than I thought. They found journals, detailed, meticulous plans, timetables, printouts of car schematics, even diary entries about practicing on junk parts. This wasn't a sudden snap, it was a project. Her magnum opus of revenge. She's been committed for psychiatric evaluation. I don't know what happens next, and I'm trying not to think about it. Physically, I'm fine. I'm back in my own apartment. It's over. But every time I get in my car now, I have to physically stop myself from kneeling down to check the brake lines. Every time I see a green highway sign, my stomach plummets. I won the game, I guess. I got us off the road. But the cost of admission was every good thing I thought I knew about my own past. The story is over, but I have a feeling it's never really going to end.